Grimora. The lake was still, not quiet, still. The kind of stillness that presses against your skin, that makes the air heavy and your heartbeat sound like a drum in your own ears. The kind of stillness that feels watched. It had been 7 years since Daniel Kerr had last seen Hollow Lake. 7 years since the accident. 7 years since the water swallowed his wife and daughter and never gave them back. Now he was coming home. The cabin sat on the northern edge of the lake, where the trees bent toward the water like mourners. It had been his family's summer place, a little wooden house with blue shutters and a crooked dock where his daughter Anna used to dangle her feet and feed the fish. When the realtor handed him the keys, she said softly, "It's still the same, like they just stepped out for a while." He hadn't answered. He couldn't. The drive from town had taken him nearly 3 hours. The last stretch was nothing but dirt and fog. By the time he reached the cabin, dusk had painted the lake in gray and rust. He stepped out of the truck, the sound of gravel crunching under his boots. The air smelled of pine, wet wood, and faintly, though he told himself it was his imagination, salt water. The door creaked when he opened it. Inside, the place was exactly as he remembered. His photographs still hung on the walls. His wife, Elise, her blonde hair caught mid-laughter. Anna, chasing their golden retriever across the porch. Only the clock on the mantel had changed. It was ticking again. He hadn't wound it in 7 years. He stood there for a long time, just listening to it. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Each sound felt like a breath from something that shouldn't be alive. He unpacked just enough to survive the night. A sleeping bag, a bottle of whiskey, and his old lantern. The rest could wait till morning. Outside, the fog rolled across the lake, curling around the dock like fingers. He poured himself a drink and sat by the window. In the dark reflection of the glass, he saw his own tired eyes staring back, until he didn't. For just a moment, no longer than a blink, the reflection behind him shifted. A small shape moved across the back wall near the kitchen. It looked like a child. He spun around. Nothing. The air was still, the kitchen empty. Only the faint drip of the sink echoed in the silence. He exhaled, running his hand down his face. "You're seeing things," he muttered. "It's just the whiskey." But he didn't drink another drop after that. Instead, he took the lantern and walked outside to the dock. The moon was full, silver light scattering across the ripples. In the distance, the dark outline of the opposite shore was barely visible. He could almost hear Elise's voice then, faint, soft, humming that old lullaby she used to sing for Anna. He stood perfectly still. The sound was coming from the water. He leaned closer, holding his breath. The song stopped. Then something broke the surface. A single bubble, then another, then a ripple that spread outward like a sigh. Daniel's throat tightened. He backed away slowly, his boots scraping against the wood. A whisper drifted through the fog, quiet, like someone breathing his name. "Dan?" He froze. That voice, he hadn't heard it in 7 years. "Elise?" No answer. Just the water lapping gently against the dock. He swallowed hard and turned back toward the cabin. But as he stepped off the dock, his lantern flickered. The light stuttered once, twice, and then went out. Behind him, the water rippled again. This time, closer. Inside, the air felt colder than before. The fireplace was dead, but he could see his breath in front of him. He lit a match, but it flickered weakly, the flames struggling against something unseen. He tried to shake it off, grabbed his jacket, and sat near the unlit fire. That's when he saw it again, a faint shimmer in the glass of the window. At first, it looked like mist. Then, slowly, it began to take form. It was a face, pale, wet, eyes wide open. Anna's eye. He shot up, stumbling backwards so hard he hit the chair. When he looked again, the reflection was gone, but the sound of dripping water followed him, soft and steady, echoing across the floorboards. He knelt down. The wooden boards beneath the rug were damp. He pulled it back, revealing a small puddle of water, perfectly still, as if it hadn't seeped in from anywhere. Then he noticed something beneath it, a single footprint, small, bare. He followed the wet prints across the floor, through the living room, down the short hallway, until they stopped in front of Anna's old bedroom door. It was closed. He reached for the knob. It was freezing to the touch. When he pushed it open, the room was exactly as she'd left it. The drawings on the wall, the dolls arranged on the shelf, the pink curtains swaying gently, though the window was shut. On her bed sat something new, a small glass jar. Inside it, murky water, and floating within, a single marble, blue, Anna's favorite color. Daniel's hand shook as he picked it up. How? The lid was sealed tight. He could see something faintly inside the marble, a reflection or maybe an image. He held it closer to the lantern light. For an instant, he saw his daughter's face inside it, smiling. Then the marble cracked. The sound was sharp, unnatural, like ice breaking underwater. The glass jar shattered in his hand, spilling cold water down his wrist. It hit the floor and ran beneath the bed, forming a trail that didn't spread naturally. It moved, flowing in a perfect straight line toward the far corner of the room. He followed it with the lantern. There, the wallpaper was peeling, the boards darker than the rest. He pressed his hand against them, soft, damp. Then, from the other side of the wall, a knock. Once, twice, then a third time, softer. Daniel stepped back, heart pounding. "Who's there?" The knocks stopped. For a long moment, only the sound of the ticking clock filled the air. Then, faintly, the voice again. "Daddy?" His knees went weak. "Anna?" The wall shuddered once, a deep, hollow sound as if the whole house inhaled. Then the boards began to weep. Dark water seeped from the seams, slow and steady, trickling toward his feet. Daniel stumbled backwards, the lantern shaking in his hand. It died again. He turned, fumbling for the door, but the handle wouldn't move. The whisper came again, closer this time. "Daddy, come see."
Daniel pressed harder against the door handle, but it refused to budge. The metal was slick with condensation, ice cold beneath his palm. He slammed his shoulder into it once, then again. On the third hit, the door gave way. He stumbled into the hallway, gasping for breath, his pulse drumming in his ears. The air outside Anna's room was different now, heavy, damp and thick with the scent of rot. The floorboards creaked beneath him as he backed away, eyes still locked on that dark, open doorway. Water trickled from it in slow, winding streams, crawling across the hall like veins. He ran to the main room, grabbed his flashlight from the duffel bag, and clicked it on. The beam wavered through the fog inside the cabin. He swept the light across the walls. Nothing. Across the ceiling. Nothing. Then down to the floor. The puddles were gone. No water. No footprints. The floor was bone dry. Daniel's breathing grew shallow. His mind raced, trying to make sense of it. "You're tired, hallucinating," he whispered to himself. "It's the lake, the memories, that's all." He turned back toward Anna's door. Closed again. The same faint pink ribbon still hung from the handle. He hadn't shut it. That night, sleep didn't come easy. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face in the water. Not the way he remembered her, bright and laughing, but pale, eyes open, hair drifting around her like weeds. When he did drift off, it wasn't for long. A sound awoke him, soft, rhythmic tapping. He opened his eyes to the dark cabin. The tapping came from outside the window. Tap, tap, tap. He reached for the flashlight and shone it through the glass. A small handprint was pressed against the window pane. Then, slowly, another appeared beside it, and another. He stood frozen, the light trembling in his hand. The prints were on the outside, forming in the fog on the glass, but they were rising, higher, like something was climbing up the wall. He stepped back, his chest tight. Then the sound changed, fingers dragging across the glass, scratching, long and deliberate. He moved toward the window, whispering, "Anna?" The scratching stopped. The next sound came from the roof, a single, heavy step, then another, then silence. He raised the flashlight toward the ceiling, his heart pounding. The roof groaned. Dust fell from the rafters. He ran to the front door, threw it open, and shone the light upward. The roof was empty. The fog was thicker now, rolling low and heavy, blanketing everything in white. The moonlight caught it in waves, making the lake shimmer faintly through the trees. For a second, he thought he saw movement near the dock, something standing there, small and still, but when he blinked, it was gone.
Morning came gray and lifeless. Daniel made coffee, though it tasted like lake water in his mouth. He sat by the window, staring at the dock. The fog hadn't lifted. He told himself he'd stay only one more night, just to face the memories, to prove to himself there was nothing here but ghosts of the mind. Then he'd leave for good. But something wouldn't let him go. A pull, deep, invisible, but constant. By afternoon, he found himself walking down to the dock again. The boards creaked beneath his boots, swollen from years of rain. He stared into the dark water. For a moment, he thought he saw the shape of the old rowboat down below, the one that had overturned that night, the one they never recovered. He crouched, squinting through the ripples. Then, suddenly, a bubble surfaced. Then another. A pale, small hand rose from the depths. Daniel stumbled backward, heart hammering, as the hand reached the surface, then slipped away again, into the dark. He fell onto the dock, chest heaving, eyes wide, but the water stilled, as if nothing had happened. "God, what's happening to me?" he muttered. He backed away slowly, never turning his back to the water. Halfway up the path to the cabin, he noticed something lying in the dirt. A shoe. Small, pink, faded from sun and water. He picked it up with shaking hands. He remembered buying that pair for Anna on her 5th birthday. She'd worn them every day until the day they went to the lake, the day they drowned. He dropped the shoe, his eyes burning. But then, a giggle, soft, from behind him. He turned slowly, dread crawling up his spine. No one there, just trees, fog, and the still lake. The giggle came again, closer this time. Then a whisper that froze his blood. "Come play, Daddy." Daniel ran, up the hill, into the cabin, slamming the door behind him. His breath came in ragged bursts. He pressed his back to the wood and slid down to the floor, trembling. He sat there for what felt like an hour before he finally dared to move again. That's when he noticed the water, thin trails of it seeping in under the door. It slid across the floorboards, pooling around his feet, cold as ice. He scrambled to his feet, stepping back, but the water kept spreading. From the hallway came the sound of dripping again. Drip, drip, drip. He turned his head and froze. At the end of the hallway stood a small figure. A child, her hair dripping wet, her face pale and still. "Anna, Anna," his voice cracked. "Sweetheart, is that really you?" She didn't move, her head tilted slightly to the side, eyes unblinking. Then, in a voice that didn't sound like hers at all, low, distorted, echoing, she said, "You left us." Daniel fell to his knees, tears welling. "No, no, I tried to save you. You let us sink." The walls around her began to ripple, the wood bending like the surface of water. Her figure shimmered, then vanished, leaving only a puddle in her place. Daniel's body shook. He clutched his chest, gasping. The sound of water filled the cabin again, rushing, rising. The clock on the mantel ticked faster now. Tick, 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 tick. He turned toward it. The hands spun wildly, faster and faster, until the glass cracked. Then everything stopped. Silence. He was alone again. But when he looked down at the puddle on the floor, it wasn't still. It was moving toward him. The puddle crept closer, snaking across the warped wood in thin rivulets that glistened under the pale morning light. Daniel stumbled backward, his heel catching on the leg of a chair. It clattered over, but he barely heard it. His focus was fixed on that slow-moving water. It wasn't spreading randomly. It was following him. He grabbed a towel, pressed it to the floor, trying to soak it up. But the water didn't absorb. It moved around the fabric, twisting and curling like a living thing. Then, a faint reflection shimmered on the surface. A woman's face, not Anna's. Older, eyes hollow, mouth open in a silent scream. Daniel lurched back so fast he hit the wall. The reflection rippled and faded, but the water remained, darkening, thickening. He ran to the window and threw open the curtains. Light spilled into the cabin, but it didn't help. The air inside felt wrong, heavy, almost liquid. For the first time, Daniel considered leaving, truly leaving. Forget the memories, forget the closure, just go. He grabbed his keys from the counter and reached for the door. When he opened it, the lake was closer. It shouldn't have been. The shoreline was usually 50 feet away, but now the water lapped just beyond the porch steps, creeping forward with every breath of wind. The dock was gone, completely submerged. And there, in the distance, something floated near the surface. A figure, face down. Daniel's mind fractured between disbelief and recognition. He wanted to look away, but his body wouldn't listen. Slowly, he stepped forward, each creak of the porch echoing through the fog. The figure drifted closer. It was wearing a red jacket. He stopped breathing. That jacket, he remembered it. He'd worn it the day of the accident, the day he dived into the freezing water and never came back up with Anna, the day she slipped beneath the waves while he screamed her name, the day he almost died too. Now that same red jacket floated just beyond the reeds, attached to a body that looked exactly like him. Daniel stumbled back in horror. His reflection on the lake wasn't just mirroring him. It was there, real, bloated, and motionless. And as he stared, the corpse's eyes open. They were pitch black. The mouth moved, bubbling water spilling out as it whispered, "She's waiting." Daniel's scream was lost to the fog. By afternoon, he sat motionless inside the cabin, staring at the floor. The world outside felt unreal, like a fever dream he couldn't wake from. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. He lit a candle, then another. It was stupid, he knew it, but the warm light made the shadows feel less alive. The phone on the counter caught his attention. He'd left it off since arriving, but now he needed a voice, any voice. He turned it on. No signal. The screen flickered once before showing a single notification. One new voicemail. Daniel frowned. He hadn't given this number to anyone. He hit play. Static. Then, through the distortion, a child's giggle. Then, Anna's voice, clear, soft, and wet sounding. "Daddy, you forgot your promise." He dropped the phone. It clattered across the table, the speaker still crackling with faint whispers. He covered his ears, but the sound seemed to seep through his palms. When he looked up again, water was leaking from the phone's speaker, dripping onto the table, forming small puddles that spread outward. He backed away. The whispers grew louder, different voices now, overlapping, distorted cries rising and falling like a drowning chorus. The phone screen flashed and then went dark. The puddles on the table shimmered, and Daniel saw movement inside them. Tiny ripples formed shapes, hands, faces, eyes, all pressing against the surface like something trapped beneath glass. He turned and ran for the door.
Outside, the fog had thickened. The entire forest looked submerged in a silver-gray sea. Every sound, every footstep, every breath echoed unnaturally,
like being underwater. He followed the dirt path toward the highway, or where he thought the highway was. But the trees seemed to shift as he moved, closing in behind him, guiding him back toward the lake. No matter how far he went, he ended up at the same spot, the dock half sunk and the water waiting for him. Something was pulling him. He knelt down near the edge, trembling. "Anna, please, if you are here, let me see you, just once." The lake rippled. Then a small, pale hand broke through the surface. It reached toward him, fingers thin and shaking. He hesitated for a moment, tears in his eyes, then grabbed it. The hand was ice cold and real. But when he pulled, it wasn't a child that emerged. It was himself. A mirror image of Daniel rose from the lake, skin pale, water streaming from its open mouth. Its eyes, Anna's eyes, stared into his. It spoke in his voice, but wrong, stretched and layered with whispers. "You don't get to leave again." Then it lunged. Daniel fell backward, hitting the dock hard. The thing collapsed on top of him, heavy, its breath reeking of stagnant water and decay. He fought it off, struggling to push it away, but its grip was inhumanly strong. It pressed a wet hand against his chest, and for a brief, horrifying second, he felt water filling his lungs, not through his mouth, but seeping through his skin. He gasped, choking, feeling the burn of lake water flooding his chest. He clawed at the creature's arm, pulling it free. The creature screeched like bubbles bursting underwater and dissolved into mist. Daniel crawled back to the cabin, coughing violently, water spilling from his mouth as he gasped for air. He lay on the floor, shaking, soaked and terrified. When he looked up, the walls of the cabin were dripping. Water poured from every seam, every board, every nail. The air was alive with whispers, and over them all, a child's voice sang softly, a lullaby he hadn't heard since Anna was born. It came from the bedroom, from her old room.
The lullaby grew louder as Daniel crept down the narrow hallway, his clothes dripping with lake water that wasn't supposed to be there. The cabin's walls gleamed like wet flesh, light from the flickering candles bouncing off the moisture. Each step he took made a faint slosh beneath the floorboards, as if the lake had seeped inside. He hesitated outside Anna's room. The door was half open. A faint pink glow flickered from within, soft, rhythmic, like the glow of a heartbeat. "Anna?" No answer. He pushed the door open. The room was exactly as it had been before the accident. Her tiny bed, the wooden horse by the corner, the small lamp with the butterfly shade. But everything looked underwater. Dust floated in the air like sediment. The curtains swayed, though there was no breeze, and the glow he'd seen was coming from the small mirror on her dresser. The surface of the mirror rippled. Daniel stepped closer. "Anna," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Sweetheart, if you're here, please, just show me." For a moment, nothing moved. Then the reflection shifted, not like a normal mirror image, but like a window opening into something deeper. Anna appeared, sitting cross-legged on the other side. She was smiling, but her eyes were different, dark, glossy, reflecting nothing. "Daddy?" she said, her voice bubbling like she was speaking through water. "You came back." Daniel dropped to his knees in front of the mirror. "Oh my God, Anna, baby, I tried to save you. I tried. Please believe me." "I know," she said softly. "You left me because you had to breathe." Her words struck him like a knife. He reached out a trembling hand toward the mirror. His fingers met cold glass. But then, impossibly, the surface gave way like liquid. She reached back, her small hand pressing against his palm. It felt real. It felt alive. "Daddy," she whispered, "the water's cold. Come, help me." He hesitated. "I can't, sweetheart. I can't go back there." Her smile faded. Her dark eyes widened, the surface of the mirror beginning to churn. "You were supposed to stay beneath." The mirror cracked. A line shot down the center, and water began leaking out, running down the dresser and pooling at Daniel's knees. The surface shimmered, then burst open like glass giving way to a tidal wave. Water gushed out, knocking Daniel backward as the cabin filled with a torrent of freezing liquid. He screamed, but the water swallowed his sound. He kicked, gasped for air, but the cabin wasn't flooding. It was drowning him. The air was thick, liquid. The walls bent, the ceiling pressed downward. Through the chaos, he saw her, Anna, floating just above him, her hair drifting like ribbons, her face calm. She reached for him again. "Breathe," she said. He shook his head violently, bubbles bursting from his mouth. "Breathe," she repeated, louder this time. Then her face began to distort, her jaw unhinging, eyes stretching wider until the blackness inside them consumed her entire face. "Breathe!" Daniel screamed as his lungs gave in, pulling water deep inside. The cold spread through his chest, then up into his skull. His vision darkened. He woke up, gasping, on the cabin floor. Everything was dry. The air was still. The mirror was gone. For a few seconds, Daniel thought it had all been a dream, until he noticed the puddle beneath his hand. He lifted it and stared at the dark water smeared across his skin. And then he realized the floor was damp all around him, shallow pools forming the shape of footprints, small footprints leading out of the room. He followed them into the hallway. They trailed past the kitchen, through the front door, down the porch steps, and out toward the lake. The fog outside glowed faintly, the color of moonlit bone. The air was silent, not even the sound of insects or waves. Only the distant clang of a bell echoed faintly across the water, slow, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. He froze. There were no bells near Hollow Lake, and yet the sound came again. Clang, clang. Each ring seemed closer, pulling at something deep in his chest. He stepped off the porch and followed the sound. His bare feet sank into the wet earth as he moved closer to the shoreline. The footprints continued ahead, leading into the shallows. The fog thickened until he could barely see a few feet ahead, but the bell kept ringing, every toll vibrating through his ribs.
He reached the edge of the water. The footprints disappeared beneath the surface. Anna! The fog swirled. A faint shape stood in the distance, small, still, unmoving. It was her. Her white dress fluttered in the invisible current, her hair floating as though the air itself were water. She turned slowly, her face hidden by her hair. Daniel stepped forward, tears cutting clean lines down his dirty face. "I'm here, baby. I'm here now." She raised her hand and pointed behind him. He turned. The cabin lights flickered once. Then, standing at the porch, was another shape, his reflection again, soaked, lifeless, eyes black as tar. It was smiling. Daniel froze between them, his daughter ahead, his doppelganger behind. The bell rang again, louder, almost deafening. Then both figures spoke at once, their voices echoing over each other. "Come home." The lake erupted. Water exploded upward like a geyser, knocking Daniel off his feet. He hit the ground hard, mud filling his mouth, his ears ringing. When he looked up, the water was rising. Not just the waves, but the entire lake. It was lifting, twisting upward, forming a massive shape. A face. A woman's face. Huge, ancient, with hollow eyes that poured streams of water down like tears. It spoke without sound, its lips moving slowly, and though he couldn't hear the words, he knew what it said. "You took her." Daniel screamed into the storm. "No, I tried to save her. I tried—" The face leaned closer, the waves crashing around him, pulling him toward the center of the lake. "You left her." He stumbled backward, but the water beneath him was no longer solid ground. It reached up, grabbing his legs, pulling him toward the depths. He clawed at the earth, dragging himself up the shore, but every inch he gained, the water claimed back twice as fast. "Please," he cried, "I just want her back." The lake roared. And somewhere in that sound, beneath the chaos and the thunder, he heard a child's laughter, soft, distant, echoing like a memory. "Daddy, come play." The water surged, swallowing him whole.
Daniel sank beneath the surface before he could take a breath. The cold hit him like a fist, every nerve in his body screaming at once. He opened his mouth to shout, but swallowed water instead. It filled his lungs, pressed into his ears, and roared in his skull. The lake was darker than he remembered. Not just absence of light. This was living darkness. It pulsed, moved, carried whispers that brushed his skin like the fingers of the dead. He kicked, struggled, reached for anything that could pull him up, but his hands touched only silt and shadows. Then he saw it. Below him, deep in the black, the outline of a house glowed faintly, an underwater version of his cabin, its windows shining with pale, ghostly light. Through one window a shape moved, small, familiar. "Anna!" The word was just bubbles. He kicked downward. The deeper he swam, the quieter everything became. No sound, no current, just his heartbeat slowing with each stroke. His chest burned, his vision blurred, still he kept swimming. When he reached the submerged cabin, he hesitated. The door stood open, light spilling from within, shimmering like a dying sun. He pushed inside. The living room was perfect. The same couch, same rug, even the same photo of Anna on the wall. Except in this version, her face was different. Her smile was gone, replaced by a faint frown, her eyes dull and gray. A child's giggle echoed down the hall. He followed the sound. Anna's door was ajar again. Water drifted through it like mist. Inside, she sat on her bed, her small hands folded in her lap, staring at the floor. "Sweetheart," Daniel whispered, voice trembling even in the silence of the deep. "I found you." She didn't look up. He walked closer, his movements slow, the water thick like syrup. When he was a few feet away, she finally raised her head. Her eyes were still black. "Why did you leave me, Daddy?" Tears blurred his vision. "I didn't want to. I tried to hold on, but the current. You promised you wouldn't let go." "I know," he choked. "I'm sorry, Anna. Please, just come back with me." Her expression softened for a moment, the faintest flicker of warmth returning to her face. But then something shifted behind her, a dark silhouette in the corner of the room. Daniel squinted through the murk. It was a woman's shape, long hair, a dress that swayed with the invisible current. He froze. "Who's that?" Anna turned toward the shadow. "She said I could stay. She said you'd come back." The shape stepped closer, its features emerging through the water. A pale face with hollow eyes, mouth sewn shut by strands of lake weed. Her skin was gray, wrinkled, stretched too thin. Daniel recognized her. "Mrs. Lowell," he whispered, "the woman who drowned here before us." She'd been a local. Her name whispered in old newspapers, the widow who had vanished years ago, her body never found. Now she hovered beside Anna, her head tilting unnaturally, as if her neck couldn't quite hold its weight. Her eyes moved, two black voids that focused directly on him. The stitches on her mouth strained as if something beneath them wanted to speak. Then, one by one, the threads began to snap. A rush of bubbles burst from her mouth as she screamed. No sound, just a vibration that shook the entire cabin. Anna screamed too, clutching her ears. The walls began to split, streams of black water pouring through the cracks. Daniel reached for his daughter, but the current tore her from his arms. "Anna!" She drifted toward the door, her hair spiraling around her face, her body limp. He kicked after her, but the force of the water slammed him against the wall. Mrs. Lowell lunged, her mouth wide open now, water gushing from it in endless torrents. Her scream filled his head until all he could see was darkness. He pushed off the wall, forcing his way through the doorway, through the twisting tunnel of collapsing rooms, chasing the flicker of his daughter's white dress. Suddenly, light exploded around him. He broke the surface, gasping, coughing violently. It was night again. The storm had passed, the lake calm, too calm. The cabin stood silent in the distance, lights flickering weakly through the fog. He dragged himself onto the shore, collapsing onto the mud, every breath burning. When he finally looked up, something caught his eye. Footprints, small and wet, leading from the lake to the cabin. He forced himself to stand. His body ached, but the sight of those tiny prints kept him moving. When he reached the porch, the door was open. Inside, candlelight flickered. And there, sitting on the couch, perfectly dry, was Anna. She looked exactly as she had before the accident. Same blue pajamas, same tiny braid on her shoulder. She smiled. "Hi, Daddy." He froze. "Anna, why are you crying?" He wiped his face, his tears mixing with lake water. "Because I missed you." She tilted her head. "Then don't miss me anymore."
He stepped closer, hesitant. "What do you mean?" She looked up at him, eyes gentle and warm again. Human eyes. "You can stay. Mommy said you could." Daniel's heart stopped. "Mommy?" Anna pointed toward the hallway. He turned slowly. Standing in the doorway was a woman, dripping, smiling, eyes that once were full of love, now hollow and black. Karen, his wife. He hadn't seen her since the funeral. She'd never made it to the lake the night of the accident. She'd been too broken, too lost. She'd taken her own life weeks later, and now she was here. "Danny," she whispered. Her voice sounded both beautiful and empty, like wind over an empty bottle. "You don't have to fight anymore." He shook his head, backing up. "You're not real." Her smile widened. "Neither are you. Not anymore." He stumbled. I'm alive." She stepped forward, water dripping from her hair. "Then why can't you leave the lake?" Daniel looked toward the window. The world outside was gone, just water, endless, stretching to the horizon. He wasn't on land anymore. The cabin floated in the middle of the lake, and beneath the floorboards he could hear it, the deep, steady thump, thump of a heartbeat. The lake was breathing. He turned back toward his wife. "What do you want?" She reached out a hand. "Just come home." Her fingers brushed his cheek, cold, soft. The touch sent a shiver through him, but also peace. For a second, he wanted to let go. But then he looked at Anna, and something in her expression changed. Her smile faltered. Her eyes filled with fear. "Daddy, don't!" she cried. "She's not Mommy!" The woman's smile cracked. Water spilled from her mouth. Her eyes went black again, wider and wider, until they were nothing but void. The lights went out. The walls groaned, the wood bending inward. Water poured through every crack, every seam. Daniel grabbed Anna and ran toward the back door, but it slammed shut on its own. The windows burst inward, cold water flooding the room. He held Anna tight as the water rose past their knees, then their chests. The woman floated above them now, her limbs twisting unnaturally, her hair spreading like tendrils. "Stay," she hissed. "Stay beneath." Daniel shouted over the roar of the water. "Not again! You can't have her!" He pushed Anna upward, forcing her toward the collapsing window. "Go, baby, swim!" she screamed, reaching for him. "Daddy, go!" The water swallowed them both.
Darkness swallowed Daniel, cold, endless, silent. For a moment he felt weightless, adrift in something thicker than water, darker than night. The world above him had dissolved into black ripples. His lungs screamed for air, but the lake didn't care. He reached out blindly, searching for Anna. His fingers brushed fabric, her dress. He pulled her close, but her body felt light, limp, almost hollow. "Anna!" he cried, his voice lost in the water. Her eyes opened, glowing faintly blue in the dark. "Daddy, she's here." Daniel turned. A figure loomed in the murk, taller than before, twisted by the weight of the water. Mrs. Lowell's hair streamed out like an underwater storm. Her face decayed, yet her mouth was open in a strange, serene smile. Behind her, hundreds of faces floated, gray, bloated, silent. Men, women, children, all staring with empty sockets. The drowned, the lakes,
forgotten. Their bodies swayed like reeds, bound together by long tendrils of lakeweed. Each movement sent a wave through the water, and Daniel felt it pulse through his veins like a second heartbeat. He tightened his grip on Anna. "Hold on to me!" But the tendrils began to move, coiling around his legs, wrapping his arms, pulling him down. He kicked, thrashed, tore at them, but they tightened, strong as chains. Anna screamed, bubbles spilling from her mouth. Daniel reached out, desperate, but she was already being dragged backward toward the mass of faces. "No!" He lunged, tearing through the weeds, his skin burning as the cold bit deeper. The drowned faces parted as Anna drifted among them, and from behind, the ghostly woman raised her hand. The lake itself seemed to shudder, and Daniel saw it. The truth. This wasn't just water. It was a graveyard. Every person who drowned in Hollow Lake was still here, feeding the darkness, bound to the woman who died first, Mrs. Lowell. Her voice filled his mind, soft and slow, like a lullaby sung from the bottom of a coffin. "They left me to rot, but I found them. I kept them safe. I'll keep her safe too." Daniel's head throbbed, his chest tightened. He could feel his pulse slowing. "No, not her!" The lake pressed harder, crushing his lungs. He closed his eyes, searching for air, for light, anything. And then he saw it, a flicker, a reflection of the surface, moonlight trembling just above him. He reached for it. Something inside him shifted, an instinct, a memory, something beyond fear. He yanked his arm free, ripped the weeds from his legs, and kicked upward with every ounce of strength left in his body. The tendrils tore away, but Mrs. Lowell moved like a storm behind him, her mouth widening into a black whirlpool. The water spun violently, pulling him back. Anna screamed again, her small hands reaching for him. For a split second, he met her eyes and saw something deep in them, something not of this world. Her reflection shimmered against the water, and behind her, through her, he saw Karen, his wife. Not the ghost he had seen in the cabin, but her real face, warm, loving, alive. She mouthed a single word, "Go." The whirlpool shattered. Daniel broke the surface, gasping, the air cutting into his lungs like knives. The moon burned above him, full and silver. He spun, searching. "Anna!" No answer. He called again, louder, voice cracking. "Anna!" Then, faintly, he heard it. A cry. He turned. She was there, clinging to a piece of driftwood near the shore. He swam to her, arms aching, every stroke a prayer. When he reached her, she collapsed against him, sobbing. He held her close, trembling. "It's over, sweetheart. It's over." But the lake was not done. Behind them, the surface began to move again, slowly, purposefully. Bubbles rose, thousands of them. The water churned, black as oil, swallowing the moonlight.
Daniel turned just in time to see a hand break the surface. Then another, dozens. The drowned were rising. He grabbed Anna and ran for the shore, stumbling through the shallows. The mud sucked at his feet. Every step felt like walking through tar. Behind him, the dead pulled themselves from the water, their eyes white and glowing.
their mouths open in silent screams. Mrs. Lowell stood among them, her body half submerged, her hair floating like smoke. "Don't leave me," she whispered. "You belong here now." The air turned cold. The trees bent inward as if bowing to her will. Daniel staggered up the slope, clutching Anna's hand. "Run, baby, run!" They burst through the tree line, branches slashing their skin. The cabin came into view, dim, broken, its door swaying in the wind. He shoved her inside and slammed the door behind them. For a moment, there was silence, only the sound of dripping water. Then, slowly, a knock came at the door. 3 slow knocks. Daniel froze. "Daddy," she whispered, "don't open it." The knocks came again, harder this time. Then a voice, soft, gentle, familiar. "Danny, it's me." Karen's voice. He closed his eyes, tears spilling. "No, no, it's not." The door rattled, wood splintered. "Let me in," the voice pleaded. "Please, let me in." Anna clung to him, shaking. "It's her, Daddy. She wants you." The cabin lights flickered. The windows began to fog, water creeping down the glass. He backed away, holding Anna close. The knocking stopped. Then, from the other side of the door, came a whisper. "You can't run from where you've drowned." The door burst open. A wall of black water exploded through, sweeping them off their feet. Daniel clung to Anna, tumbling through darkness once more. But this time, something felt different. The water wasn't trying to drown him. It was pulling him somewhere. A vision flashed before his eyes. The lake, calm and glassy. The sun rising. 2 figures standing at the edge. A man and a little girl, smiling, peaceful. And then his wife beside them. Not the hollow ghost, but real, her hand resting on his shoulder. He blinked, and they were gone. He opened his eyes again to silence. He was on the shore, coughing, sputtering, alive. The cabin was gone. The lake stretched before him, perfectly still. Beside him, Anna lay on the grass, breathing. She opened her eyes slowly and smiled. "Daddy?" He smiled weakly through tears. "Yeah, sweetheart, I'm here." He looked back at the lake. It looked different now, smaller somehow, quieter, almost peaceful. But just as he turned to carry Anna toward the forest, something caught his eye beneath the surface, a reflection, his own face, and beside it, another, Karen, smiling. Then her eyes opened, completely black, and the lake rippled. Morning came like a lie. The mist was gone, the lake calm, as if nothing had ever happened. Birds sang faintly over the trees, their songs trembling with the wind. Daniel carried Anna in his arms, her head resting on his shoulder, her small body still shivering. They walked through the dew-covered grass in silence. The world seemed to breathe again, but Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed them out of the water. When they reached the road, he saw the old wooden sign, "Welcome to Hollow Lake, established 1891. It leaned sideways, half covered in moss, the letters fading. A sheriff's truck rolled up moments later, its tires crunching over gravel. Sheriff Duncan stepped out, his face pale and drawn. He froze when he saw them, soaked,
barefoot, eyes wide. "Good Lord," he murmured. "Daniel." "Anna?" Daniel tried to speak, but his throat was dry. "They're gone. All of them." The sheriff frowned. "Who's gone?" Daniel turned toward the lake. It shimmered under the rising sun, still, almost glassy. He whispered, "The ones who never left." The sheriff followed his gaze and went still. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Duncan sighed. "You're lucky to be alive, son. Nobody ever comes out of that water." He looked at Anna, who was staring at the lake quietly, her lips moving, whispering something only she could hear. "What's she saying?" Duncan asked. Daniel shook his head. "I don't know." But he did know. Deep down, she was whispering to the lake, to her. The sheriff guided them into the truck and drove them back toward town. As the trees thinned, Daniel caught one last glimpse of Hollow Lake in the side mirror. And that's when he saw it. A ripple, a faint circle spreading across the surface, as if someone or something had just submerged again. Then a hand broke through, only for a second, and then it was gone.
2 weeks later, Daniel sat by Anna's hospital bed. She was quiet, drawing on a sketch pad with the crayons a nurse had given her. The doctors said she was fine, physically, but she didn't speak much anymore. Daniel watched her, trying to find words, but all that came out was silence. Then she looked up at him and smiled softly. "Daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart?" She held up her drawing. It was of the lake, perfectly still, the cabin on one side, and beneath the water, dozens of faces staring up. In the middle of the drawing, a woman stood with her arms open. Her hair floated like seaweed, and next to her, holding her hand, was a little girl. Daniel's blood ran cold. "Anna, who is that?" She tilted her head. "That's me." He froze. "She said I belong with her," Anna continued softly. "But I told her I have to stay with you for a little while." Daniel's heart pounded. "Who said that?" Anna blinked. Her eyes reflected the hospital light, but just for a moment, they shimmered dark blue, like deep water. "She did," she whispered. "The lady with the drowned eyes." The lights flickered. Daniel's breath hitched. He turned toward the window, drawn by something moving outside. The hospital overlooked the edge of town. From there, you could just see the lake in the distance, a small sliver of silver beneath the morning haze. As he watched, ripples formed again on its surface, slow, wide, spreading outward. Anna giggled softly. "She's watching." Daniel turned to her, but she had already put the drawing down and closed her eyes, smiling faintly. He reached for her hand. "Anna?" Her small fingers twitched, but she didn't wake. And on the sketch pad, a drop of water appeared. Just one, sliding slowly down the paper, across the drawn lake, smudging the pencil lines into a gray blur. Daniel looked up. The ceiling was dry. Another drop landed, then another. He stood, heart hammering, as the lights flickered again. The floor around Anna's bed began to glisten, wet footprints appearing one after another, leading from the window to the foot of her bed.
Daniel turned toward the window, and the curtains fluttered, though there was no wind. A faint whisper filled the air, soft, familiar. "You can't keep her from where she belongs." The hospital monitor beeped sharply, once, then flatlined. Daniel screamed, rushing forward, but Anna's hand was cold now. Still. The window burst open, and a gust of freezing air filled the room, carrying the faint scent of lake water. Papers flew, the sketchpad flipped open, and on its last page, Daniel saw something new. A drawing of him, standing alone by the lake, reaching down into the water, his reflection staring back, and behind that reflection, Karen, smiling. The wind died, the lights steadied. Anna lay still, peaceful. Daniel collapsed beside her bed, broken, his sobs lost in the silence. Outside, in the distance, Hollow Lake shimmered under the dawn, its surface calm, its depths waiting. And just as the morning sun crept over the trees, two faint ripples appeared. Then, two shadows, a man and a little girl, standing hand in hand beneath the water, watching, waiting, home again.